Has anyone ever tried penguin meat? Huh. If you're familiar with the X-Men or have played Infamous Second Son, then you may have noticed this trend in superhuman media where superpowers are used as an allegory for racism. And I'm gonna tell you why that's a stupid comparison. Because seriously, how can you compare someone like Jean Grey to a black guy wanting to use a water fountain? And there is one thing that justifies the oppression of one group and not the other, and that is the power of the super variety. Now I'm gonna tell you a question. Which is more scarier? Sitting next to a guy with a tad bit of melatonin in his skin, or sitting next to Black Bolt, a guy that can literally destroy cities simply just by whispering? Now the answer is obvious. Obviously sitting next to the normal humans can barely keep their act together when you give them a gun. You think it's unrealistic for someone, especially the government, be terrified of a kid who could destroy organic matter simply just by looking at it? And yes, that was a real thing in the Ultimate X-Men comics. He was so dangerous, Professor X literally had to send Wolverine out there to kill him. In Infamous Second Son, there are these audio files you can pick up, you can go around the map to pick up, and there's this one audio file that perfectly sums up my point. If a normal person has a bad day, the worst they would do is punch a wall, or at least harm a single person. But if a conduit has a bad day, the body count would be in the double digits. And that alone just fully sums up, my entire point. Now I know what you're gonna say. There's a self-fulfilling prophecy that goes along with this. In the evil playthrough of Infamous Second Son, if you choose to corrupt Fetch, you unlock a mission called Fighting the Intolerant. And in that mission, you basically go around killing anti-conduit protesters, which also has one of the most badass scripted sequences of all times in video games. Like, this image is literally moments before disaster, okay? Delsin just walks out, all confidently surrendering. Your karma meter fills up, and you're just like, okay, yep, something is about to go down, and I feel a lot of you guys are about to lose your jobs. Delsin is one of my most favorite video game characters, cause he literally just represents everyone if they suddenly woke up with superpowers. And once you complete the mission, Fetch makes a good point.
Hello, America. My name is Abigail Walker, but my friends and enemies call me Fetch. 2 things you should know about me. 1, I'm a Pisces. 2, I've never hurt an innocent person in my life. And that's still true. You may think I'm a monster, but it's not my fault. People who preach hatred of conduits leave us no choice. So who's really to blame here? Maybe you.
Which is a fair point. You poke the hornet's nest and you get stung. But my rebuttal to that goes on to my next point. And that is the fact that most superpowers are tied to emotions. Now, if you're familiar with the trope of the superhuman breakdown, or familiar with any media that features a telepath, you've probably have seen a scene or a situation where a character experiences an emotional breakdown and their powers just go out of whack, okay? Like, things just start flying everywhere and there's just a huge tornado of destructions. And although the most common factor that triggers... And that is like the most common factors that triggers the mutant abilities or a character to develop, their mutant abilities is high emotions through an intense situation. Basically, where a character experiences a high level of stress. Basically, where I'm going with this is that the fact that stress plays a huge role in most mutant and conduit abilities, mixed in with the fact that there are some that could be mentally unstable, and, the fact that life is already super stressful, especially in city areas, makes them too much of a risk to have around a large population of people. Because if they get too emotional, the results will make 9/11 look like a small earthquake. Hell, look at Scarlet Witch. She literally erased 99% of the mutant population simply by saying a single phrase. She is literally the most mentally unstable mutant in the Marvel Universe. And don't get me started on mutants like Franklin Richards or Matthew Malloy. I actually think the existence of those characters kind of justifies, humanity's attempt to extinct the whole mutant population. This actually reminds me of an SCP story where it was an SCP who was an autistic kid who had the abilities to warp reality. And due to one of the deaths of the researchers and the disruption in the kid's schedule, caused the kid to have a breakdown. And during that breakdown, it caused, all sorts of, changes in reality, which led the Foundation to euthanize him. Which, in the context of the SCP universe, is completely justified. Because, yeah, you have, an unstable kid who has these godlike abilities to change and manipulate reality. So it would make sense that, the Foundation would take those extreme measures because the kid is just simply too dangerous. And yeah, while reading the story might be in poor taste, I say that as someone who is autistic, in the in-universe context of the SCP universe, you can actually kind of understand why the Foundation made that decision. And the same thing goes with the kid from Ultimate X-Men, who unintentionally murked thousands of people, simply because he lost the gene pool and was stuck with an incredibly deadly power that he has no control over. And well, to put it in the words of Samuel L. Jackson, he's too dangerous to be left alive. Now, I get the entire point of, these type of allegories is, it's just, to say that regardless of how different we are still human beings who deserve to be treated as equals. Which is true. No matter what race or gender you are still a human being, and we're all capable of doing the same things. Yes, there are some slight biological differences, but those differences are so small to a point where they're irrelevant. In a sense of contributing to society or getting a career. But that becomes an entirely different stories when you introduce superpowers in the mix. Mutants. Mutants who are biologically different from normal human beings. And while yes, they don't have a natural pulse for aggression, but they are literally born as a living gun. When you have a mixed race school, the worst case scenario is that there might be some fights here and there and maybe some slight bullying. But if you have a mixed school of humans and superhumans, shit's gonna get messy real fast. When it comes to other races, none of us have a biological trait that makes us any more dangerous than any other race. But if you have a mutant that can control the weather, or encase people in concrete, or summon fleets of angels and demons that can just come crashing down onto people, or turn into a giant angel, that's something to take note to concern about. Yeah, let's put zombies with normal humans. The zombies who only have bracelets to keep them in check. Yeah, let's put them in there with normal high school students. I'm pretty sure nothing will go wrong. But honestly, when I see this trope in media, I feel like a huge opportunity is missed. Because whenever I see this entire superpowers as an allegory for racism, trope, I usually see this trope as, what if racial theories were true? What if blacks were naturally more aggressive and dangerous than any other race? Would segregation be justified? Would it be moral? And would racial unity be possible if it was the case? What if Asians did have naturally high intelligence? What if your race did determine your skill set? Would selective breeding be desirable? Will it become the norm? To me, I find that to be an interesting concept. Exploring hypotheticals where what hypothetical situation would justify prejudice. Something like that would definitely be more interesting than the typical racism bad thing I often see in media. Yes, we know. How many times are you gonna say it? Racism is bad. Congratulations, you solved racism by telling us the most obvious But, yeah. In short, superpowers are a terrible allegory for racism, and racism is bad for the millionth time. But anyways, that's all I want to talk about. Yeah, bye.